Hi everyone. Today I just wanted to do a short presentation on our final project of the semester. I touched on this a little bit at the end of our last presentation, but I wanted to revisit it, after you guys turned in your final book report. Now we can start to focus more on the visualizing theory project. And what I'll do here is briefly touch on the guidelines, again, give you some tips on how to approach the project, and then we'll get into a few examples that I have, examples of past projects. I believe they're the same ones that I showed you in class, but is to refresh our memories a bit and get us in the right mindset. We can look at those again. So the final project basically asks you to look at two different theories. One theory that we discussed pre-midterm, and we're going to distinguish the pre and post midterm by looking at Cooley and Mead and before, and the Adlers and later. So the pre-midterm is the theories that include Cooley and Mead and all the other theories before them during our semester. So the easiest ways is to get out your syllabus and kind of look at who we discussed and when we discussed them. And then your second theory will include a post-midterm theory, which is the Adlers and after them. So again, just basically, think about, go through your syllabus, the different theories we went through, and my advice always is, try to select theories that you found to be interesting, theories that you found to understand perhaps a little bit more than the other ones. So if you understand a theory, if you're interested in a theory, then it should be easier to work with respect to creating your visual. And the visual itself can be two different visuals for each theory of your selection, or you can have one visual that includes both theories. So that's up to you. What I have as examples today are three separate presentations that all have two theories in the visual. But if you want to, you can create two separate visuals to go over your two separate theories. And so the visual itself will be basically, we're looking at a standard sheet of paper, 8.5 by 11 inches. And you can create the visual in many ways. You can draw it by hand. You can get papers from magazines, newspapers to make a collage. You can get images from the internet to make a collage. So again, there's no right or wrong way to go about making the visual itself. But what I really look for is just the effort. That you're thinking about what you're doing and why you're doing it, rather than something that comes across as is thrown together at the last minute. That just kind of seems like you really didn't think too much about what you were doing, but rather just simply wanted to get it over with. So that's what I'm kind of looking for. You don't need to be an artist by trade in terms of getting the full 30 points for the visual itself. But again, I'll be looking for something that just kind of makes sense in terms of kind of what you're doing and why you're doing it. And I imagine that because of our kind of online conclusion to the semester, most of the projects will be just people getting together different images that you find on the internet and putting together in a collage-like form for your presentation, and that's fine. So for your project, so getting into the directions for the project, so we have two theories under examination, and you're going to, in addition to having the visual itself, you're going to have a two-page description of your project, and the two theories will be discussed in your two-page description, basically kind of explaining what you did and kind of how you did it. So because, again, the online version of our class, I did take away the presentation part, so you're no longer actually presenting it to the class as you would. But that two-page description is kind of like how you would be presenting it to the class in terms of what you'd be explaining and your ideas that went into the project. So the paper is worth 30 points. The visual itself is worth 30 points. And together, the final project is going to be worth 60 points. So just for a second, I wanted to kind of bring this image back to our attention. This is something that you guys looked at that I discussed in the last class presentation, our course recap. But here we can bring back our theory as a river metaphor, just again as a refresher of all the different theories that we went through during the semester, the classical theories at the top, the middle year theories in the middle of the paper, and then the more contemporary theories near the bottom. And so we can see not only all the different theories we went through, but also the connections along the way. So how the classical theorists directly and indirectly influenced, middle year or more contemporary theorist. Likewise with how the middle year theorist influenced the more contemporary theorists as well. So again, I just wanted to bring this to your attention to get you to think about, again, who we went through and then how they kind of related to other theories that we talked about during the semester. And this information, this train of thoughts could come in handy when it comes to thinking about your project and how you're going to do it. So I'll run through a few examples here, beginning with our first image. And here we see on the top two images tied into Karl Marx's commodity fetishism, and basically how we don't see commodities in terms of their usefulness, but rather we see commodities in terms of the symbolism, the as Benjamin called it, the aura that we impose upon the commodities. And when we fetishize the commodities, we're more likely to spend more money on them that we need to. The limited edition, sneakers that you'll spend a lot of money on, but maybe not even wear, just kind of keep in your closet or put on display anywhere. So when you have a pair of sneakers that's sitting in your closet or sitting on display somewhere, it's not very useful at all. But as long as you don't really see the item in terms of usefulness or practicality, you'll be more likely to buy it just for the reason of buying it sometimes. And in addition to kind of paying too much for what you're getting out of it, you could also see how when you fetishize commodities, you buy more of them than you actually need. So, you don't need, a pair of shoes for every day of the week, but nevertheless, a lot of people, if you go to our closets, we have more than enough pairs of shoes to, wear a different pair every week. So again, when we don't think of kind of the practicality, the usefulness, we don't see shoes in terms of how useful they are, or perhaps how impractical sometimes our purchases are when it comes to such items. So the bottom two images related to a theory by Guy Debord. He's a French cultural Marxist that we didn't read this semester, but nevertheless, he kind of carried on that tradition of cultural Marxism, but his focus was on kind of the appearance of things and how, it kind of ties into commodity fetishism, but basically how we want to have the latest clothing, we want to have the latest phones, not because, the clothing or the phone does anything to enhance us or to make us better people or to make our lives better, but we just want the latest to have the latest. And so, when iPhone 10 comes out, we need to get it, although iPhone 9 works just fine. When the new, fall fashions come out, we want to buy the newest fashions, although the clothes that we have still fit us fine, still do what they need to do in terms of keeping us warm and clothing us. So again, when you look at these images, you may not know right away exactly the theories that are being discussed, but that's what you're going to be doing in your two-page description, kind of talking about your images and how they relate to your theories of selection. Here's an image we can contrast with the first one in terms of seeing a different type of visual. So rather than the collage form of images, here we see a hand-drawn visual. And the visual, it kind of tells a narrative, just like the first project did. But this visual kind of does it a little bit differently. So here again we see another Guy Debord theory being presented in the visual. So the Guy Debord theory we just talked about is also illustrated here. Again, you see the idea, the iPhones and different apps and social media. And so another part of Guy Debord was talking about how the interactions of life are now through technology rather than face-to-face, and how these interactions through technology, again, are commodified in terms of people making a lot of money because we no longer communicate individually, but now communicate through our applications, through our social media, through our iPhones. So again, these interactions come with a cost. They're commodified, and people make a lot of money off them. And so that's the contemporary theory that was involved. And then the other theory that was talked about was the Communist Manifesto. And basically, it was about the workers being exploited by capitalism and the Communist Manifesto. And here they talk about not only the workers being exploited, but also the consumers being exploited. So in the past, capitalism, early capitalism, it was all about exploiting the workers. Today, in our more contemporary capitalism, based upon consumption, those who are exploited are not only the workers, but those who are exploited are the consumers. So you start to see on the left-hand side the consumer being exploited, and on the right-hand side the worker being exploited. Kind of early Marx theory versus more contemporary Marx theory today, which focuses on the exploitation of not only workers, but the exploitation of consumers. Finally, we can look at a third image here. So this project looked at another kind of Marx theory, but also tied into the neo-Marxist theory of Antonio Gramsci and his idea of the organic intellectuals. So at the top, you could probably, hopefully this image is coming through on I'm using two computers, one to do the audio and the other one's just my everyday computer. And my first computer, the visual didn't come out very well, but on this computer, you can see it. So hopefully everybody can see it when I do actually upload this. But nevertheless, the visuals is made up of a few different images in kind of a collage-like / narrative form where kind of the images kind of tell a story. And at the top there, you look at kind of the Communist Manifesto again, kind of people working, and all the workers are kind of doing the work, and those who are getting the rewards from the work disproportionately are the capitalists. So the workers aren't really getting the rewards from their work. The rewards are getting distributed to the top. And at the bottom there, you kind of see those organic intellectuals of Gramsci in terms of they're not formally connected to capitalism, but they're still connected to the system informally in terms of their policies they create and that support the system, that sustain it, rather than policies they make that try to change it or challenge it. And so again, you have politicians from different political parties, so it really doesn't matter which party you're in. Both parties kind of come together to make sure the system remains in place rather than people trying to change the system as a whole. That again always goes back to kind of profit and money as the key motivation for the exploitation of the workers for the policy making of the different politicians. So overall, as you see, three different projects, three different ways to create your visuals, and as long as you're kind of having your narrative there, again, maybe it's not going to be easy to see at first, but in your two-page description with your project, you'll be able to kind of explain what's going on and kind of why you did what you did. So I'll leave that there for now. Hopefully you found this useful. But as always, if you have any questions, feel free to reach out and I'll do my best to help.